Badly behaving pollies could be fined and suspended from Parliament as part of a long-awaited response to the toxic workplace culture in the nation's halls of power. A Parliamentary Standards Commission was a key recommendation of the Set the Standard report published in 2021 following Brittany Higgins' allegation she was raped in a minister's office.
Well, today the Albanese government will act on that recommendation, introducing legislation to Parliament. Let's go straight to political reporter Isabel Rowe at Parliament House. Isabel, so what has driven the government to bring in these new punishments?
Well, as you say, the catalyst was really that report that was done by the former Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Kate Jenkins, in 2021, which really shed light on what was quite serious culture problems inside Commonwealth parliamentary offices, namely this place, Canberra, in Parliament House. Now, that report was done on the back of those allegations from the former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins that she was raped inside a minister's office. The report spoke to hundreds of staffers and MPs who really detailed serious allegations of bullying, of sexual harassment, of gender inequality and sexism. And there was a focus on a power imbalance, and that was what was the big issue for people in that Kate Jenkins report, that MPs are elected by the public and they essentially have no employer. They run their own offices, and so when staff or other MPs wanted to make a complaint, it wasn't really clear where they would go.
And what exactly is the federal government proposing for badly behaving staff?
Well, what has been announced today is the formalisation of the Independent Parliamentary Standards Commission. That would both set standards, a code of conduct for the workplace that most other people would be used to having, and it will also be a sort of regulator. So if a complaint, for example, is made against an MP, there will be the ability for a commissioner to look at that complaint. Then 3 commissioners could oversee that complaint if it's taken further, and then make recommendations. Now, that will be kept confidential, that process. And we've heard this morning from the Finance Minister, Katy Gallagher, who is leading these changes. And she says that they really have tried to balance what should be a private matter in some people's eyes, but also the public interest.
Confidentiality requirements would be in place whilst the investigation was happening, but it's not an enduring confidentiality requirement. So once that process had finished and a matter determined, then, you know, if a complainant chose to make a comment about that, that would be completely within that complainant's right to do so.
Now, the other thing that we've been asking about this morning is how far those sanctions can actually go. As we know, MPs are elected by the people. They can only be fired by people. But what Katy Gallagher has said is that as well as potentially docking 5% pay or taking someone from a committee role, they can be suspended from Parliament. So that process would work in that the body that is being set up would recommend a sanction of suspension that would be passed on to the House that MP sits in. That House or that chamber would then vote whether or not to suspend that MP. And so without ability to vote or participate in the parliamentary process, that would be the most serious sanction that a parliamentarian could face.
OK, Isabel Rowe at Parliament House, thank you.
Well, let's get to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago now, where the Obamas will headline events on the second day. Our North America correspondent Carrington Clark is there for us. Carrington, hello to you. It was Joe Biden headlining yesterday. Today, the president he served.
Yeah, that's right. Yesterday we had that emotional address from Joe Biden, effectively a valedictory address now that he's no longer running for re-election, where he assertively pushed his legacy and tried to highlight those issues and those achievements that he believes are the signature of his time in office. Today, the attention turns to the former first family of the United States, that is the Obamas. They're coming to this home ground effectively here in Chicago, and Barack Obama will be giving the final address on day 2. Now, Barack Obama has this long history with Democratic National Convention. It was 20 years ago that he was launched to the front of the political mind mind when he gave this rousing address when he was then just a state senator from Illinois, and it was with that momentum that he went on to to seize the White House just 4 years later. The Obamas will be utilised to try to keep that enthusiasm going for Kamala Harris now that she is the nominee for the Democratic Party for this year's presidential election. He'll be trying to employ all those vaunted oratory skills to get this crowd enthused, excited, and try to convince some Americans who might be wary of electing her that she is the person they should be voting for. It's important historically that we've got the first black president of the United States endorsing the person he would like to become the first female president of the United States. Another interesting feature of this Democratic National Convention is that they are giving prime spots to Republican figures. Now, the main characteristic, though, is that they are Republican figures who have turned on Donald Trump, including one of his former press secretaries, Stephanie Grisham, who has now for a long time been an outspoken critic. And this is really about the Democrats trying to project unity among their party and showing what they say is the disunity of the Republican Party. But we'll also have celebrity appearances here, including Patti LaBelle, who we heard giving a sound check earlier today.
That's quite a treat, I would say. Meanwhile, both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are on the campaign trail.
That's right. I mean, the Democratic National Convention is receiving a huge amount of domestic and international media attention. It is a celebratory mood here in the arena, but Donald Trump is out campaigning in those crucial swing states, including holding an event today where he was focused in on one of the issues he believes is a weakness for the Harris campaign, and that is crime.
We're here today to talk about how we are going to stop the Kamala crime wave that is going on at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And she is, as you know, the most radical left person ever even thought of for a high office, certainly for the office of president. People don't know the real Kamala, but I do, and people that do what I do, they also know.
Later in the week, the former president will be heading to Arizona, again a crucial swing state where he'll be going to the border with Mexico, again to highlight one of those issues that he believes is a political strength for him, and that is immigration and more particularly border security. So the campaigning is not stopping on the Republican side. They recognise that the momentum at the moment is with the Democrats, but there are still many weeks to go, although increasingly less than there were, obviously. We are getting tight to the November election, but there are enough weeks to go that this momentum could flip on a dime.
Yeah, absolutely. They always talk about the October surprise as well. Hey, Carrington, thank you.
The university where future leaders of the Australian Defence Force are sent to study is banning visits from Chinese academics. A recent internal memo seen by the ABC reveals the University of New South Wales Canberra has told staff it will no longer lead projects involving academics from China. It's believed the move is designed to prevent the academics from visiting the ADF Academy in the nation's capital.
The New South Wales Liberal Party has backed down on threats of legal action following last week's local government nominations blunder. The party says after consulting senior counsel, it now won't go to court.
The chair of a Western Australian housing body says more people are committing minor crimes with the intention of securing accommodation in prison. A Geraldton man reoffended this week hours after he asked a local court to sentence him to jail time so he could gain access to housing and employment services. Shelter WA Chair Kieran Wong says people are choosing a life in the justice system over homelessness.
King Charles has travelled to Southport in northwest England in the wake of a stabbing that left 3 children dead and several others injured. The King privately met with the children who were present in the dance class and thanked frontline emergency services. He called for mutual respect and understanding after false reports about the suspect's identity triggered race riots.
And 36 flights were cancelled and 201 were delayed at a Japanese airport after a shop near the boarding gates misplaced a pair of scissors. The security checkpoints were closed for 2 hours before the scissors were found at the store that reported them missing.